Have you ever wondered who kicked off the fight for women's rights in America? Let's talk about a true trailblazer, Elizabeth Cady Stanton. Born in 1815, she wasn't just a name in a history book. She was a powerhouse who changed the course of American society. She was a social activist, a fierce abolitionist fighting to end slavery, and a leading figure in the women's suffrage movement. In fact, she's often credited with being the main organizer of the very first women's rights and women's suffrage movements in the United States. Think about that for a second. Before her, the idea of an organized movement for women's rights was practically unheard of. She laid the groundwork for everything that came after. Her story is one of incredible courage and vision. Imagine the world in the mid-1800s. Women had very few rights. They couldn't vote, own property in their own name after marriage, or have much of a say in their own lives. It was a man's world, through and through, but Stanton didn't accept that. She saw a world where women were treated as equal citizens, and she dedicated her life to making that vision a reality. She wasn't just sitting on the sidelines. She was on the front lines, leading the charge. Her work wasn't just about getting the vote. It was about fundamentally reshaping society's view of women. And it all started with a revolutionary idea and a historic meeting. The year is 1848. The place is Seneca Falls, New York. This is where Stanton, along with other pioneering women like Lucretia Mott, organized the Seneca Falls Convention. This wasn't just any meeting. It was the first ever women's rights convention. And at its heart was a document that would send shockwaves through the nation, the Declaration of Sentiments. Stanton was the principal author of this groundbreaking text. It was modeled after the Declaration of Independence, but with a crucial difference. It boldly declared that all men and women are created equal. It listed 18 grievances, detailing the ways in which men had established an absolute tyranny over women. It called for women to have the right to vote, to own property, to get an education, and to have a voice in their own government and in their own lives. This was radical stuff for the 1840s. The Declaration of Sentiments was a call to arms, a demand for full citizenship for women. When it was presented at the convention, it was signed by 68 women and, interestingly, 32 men. One of those men was the famous abolitionist Frederick Douglass. His presence and support were hugely significant. Douglass understood the fight for freedom and equality, and his endorsement helped lend credibility and strength to this fledgling movement. He saw the connection between the struggle for African American rights and the struggle for women's rights. Their alliance showed that the fight for justice was interconnected. The Declaration of Sentiments wasn't just a piece of paper. It was the starting gun for a revolution that would span decades. It laid out a clear agenda for what the women's rights movement wanted to achieve: full civil, social, political, and religious rights. Now, let's be real. This wasn't an overnight success story. Stanton and her fellow activists faced immense backlash. They were mocked, ridiculed, and dismissed by the press and the public. People thought their ideas were absurd, even dangerous. But they didn't back down. Elizabeth Cady Stanton knew this was going to be a long, hard fight. She continued to write, speak, and organize for the rest of her life. She collaborated closely with another icon, Susan B. Anthony, forming one of the most powerful partnerships in American history. Together, they traveled the country, gave speeches, and lobbied politicians, keeping the issue of women's suffrage in the national conversation. Stanton was the writer and philosopher of the movement, while Anthony was the organizer and strategist. They were a perfect team. Stanton's vision went beyond just the right to vote. She advocated for divorce law reform, greater economic opportunities for women, and even challenged the patriarchal interpretations of the Bible. She was a complex and sometimes controversial figure, but her commitment to women's equality never wavered. She understood that true liberation meant changing not just the laws, but also the hearts and minds of people. She challenged the very fabric of society, questioning the roles and expectations placed on women in every aspect of life, from the home to the church to the state. Her work was about empowering women to be the authors of their own lives. So, did they see their ultimate goal realized in their lifetime? Sadly, no. Elizabeth Cady Stanton passed away in 1902, 18 years before women finally won the right to vote across the United States. It was a long, grueling journey. The 19th Amendment to the Constitution, which granted women's suffrage, was finally ratified on August 26, 1920. That was 72 years after that first historic gathering in Seneca Falls. 72 years of marches, protests, petitions, and relentless activism by thousands of women and men who carried the torch that Stanton had lit. When we think about the rights and freedoms many of us take for granted today, it's crucial to remember the giants on whose shoulders we stand. Elizabeth Cady Stanton was one of those giants. Her intelligence, her courage, and her unwavering belief in equality sparked a movement that transformed America. Her story is a powerful reminder that change is possible, but it requires persistence, bravery, and a clear, unwavering vision for a better world. She wasn't just fighting for herself. She was fighting for generations of women she would never meet. The next time you see a woman casting a ballot, or running a company, or arguing a case in court, take a moment to think of Elizabeth Cady Stanton and the long, hard-fought battle she helped begin. The history of America is filled with incredible figures like Stanton, who dared to challenge the status quo. If you're interested in learning more about the people and documents that shape the nation, I encourage you to explore resources on American history and the African American experience. There are so many powerful stories waiting to be discovered. You might also find our study guide on feminist literature interesting, as it explores many of the ideas that Stanton and her contemporaries championed. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this story inspiring, please give this video a like and subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into the lives of historical figures who changed the world. We'll see you in the next one.